We're holding the conclusion of Perek Zayin of Likutei Amarim, and it's interesting, like the start of this subject. Yeah, to you too. It's interesting to start to go into this subject, but let's just give a little bit of a recap over here, and we'll see how this fits into the end of this chapter. What the Rebbe says over here, it's interesting. The whole chapter, or a big part of the chapter, deals with the Avodah of Tshuva, which is very relevant for the time we stand in now. So someone sins, Rahman al-Islam. He as the examples that the Rebbe gives, Ma'achalis, the classic example, Ma'achalis Asuris or Biyas Asuris. So let's take the first one, Ma'achalis Asuris. We say, when Hashem says don't eat something, what happens to that? When Hashem says don't eat something, it's not just like Hashem just decided. It's just an external, or a decision which is extrinsic with the thing, with this piece of this food item. Let's say meat. Hashem says don't eat it. No, it's intrinsic with the item. The item is associated with shalosh klipsat meis, which we elaborated over here on in the previous chapter and in this chapter as well. So when a person eats it, you consume it. One cannot say that, you know what, I'm going to eat it, make a bracha, eat it l'shem shamayim. L'shem shamayim means say for the sake of heaven, means say I'm going to do something heavenly subsequent to my eating, or not only subsequent to my eating, with the koyach of the eating, I'm going to do something heavenly. And he follows through, and he does something heavenly. So he doesn't elevate this piece of meat at all. Because there's nothing good, there's no teiv in this piece of meat, because it has a connection to shalosh klipsat meis. So therefore it brings the person down into the world of shalosh klipsat meis, as a result of him consuming that piece of meat, which is intrinsically connected to the shalosh klipsat meis. So he brings him down and brings the Gemara, what he learns, whatever he's going to do after that. There's nothing teiv, as opposed to klipas nega, which is the neutral klipa, which again in this Perek, primarily where the Alter Rebbe elaborates on this, the neutral, like an apple, there's no kedusha in it, on its own it's neutral, but so this is already given, and I have the choice to take the apple or elevate it, make a bracha, eat it l'shem shamayim, follow through with the shamayim, so it becomes like a sacrifice, it becomes like a korban olah. And then there's the apple, if I eat it just to without a bracha, or even if I eat it with a bracha, but I use the energy to do an aveda, to speak lashon hara and so on. So I brought it down to shalosh klipsat meis. There's nothing in between. A person, Rahman al-San, eats something even if it's mutter, it doesn't mean it's mutter without a heavenly sake, a godly sake. He brings it to the low shalosh klipsat meis, which is in a sense similar to the non-kosher piece of meat. It's like eating treif. Yet, when it comes to elevating, in other words, then we look at the subsequent state.
What are the shalosh
klipsat meis? It's an expression. It's three forces. Is based on a pasuk in Yecheskel, which is there's a triple expression, ruach sa'ara, vanan gadol, and Alter Rebbe writes with Geimer, which these stormy wind, the big cloud, which again three expressions, which based on these three expressions, it's expressed as three klipas meis. Now Alter Rebbe does not elaborate which one's which, because it's just one category. It's a category which is called shalosh klipat meis.
It's interesting though, because
sure.
Aryeh Kaplan uses that same pasuk to describe the way that the Nevi'im would the different klippos, or the different things they have to go through to get to Nevuah.
But this is not a way to get to Nevuah. Quite on the contrary, this is
part of the Merkava.
Yes, part of Merkava. But this is where he sees in the Merkava a very dark domain.
Mixing it up.
Certainly.
Okay.
Fakir, this is a person gets nowhere with this. No, and not only that, it's a makim, which is this is the makim of tumah, the core of tumah is called shalosh klipsat meis. So now what happens after? There's a problem. A person engages in shalosh klipsat meis. Rahman al-Islam, is he going to live with it for the rest of his life? It's not only physical dirt that you just go to sink and wash up. This is heavy. This is tumah. So the Alter Rebbe initially deals with the time of Allah Silavi, which the time of the peak, or the peak of Mashiach's coming, which is the Eibush just says then Utopia, rather, of Mashiach's coming, and then as the pasuk says, that I'm going to eradicate the spirit of impurity. So Hashem will eradicate the spirit of impurity. He'll rip it out of the whole system. My system, the system which is in the world, which exists. We mentioned last week. That's why it says in the Midrashim, Osid Chazir Lihi Tahir. That we'll be able to consume even the chazir, which is the epitome of macholos asuris, right? Paradigm, the archetype of macholos asuris will be litoyer, because the word is, it's not pshat Hashem stopped by a certain piece of meat and said any many will stop there. It's intrinsically also because it has so much tumah. Mashiach will come. He'll take it away from the whole system. So again, these many Maimarei Azal, you'll see they're really all interconnected. Because what they have in common is they're just going to take away, eradicate all levels of tumah. Hence, it's going to be wonderful. But he'll pull it out of the person as well. That's why we want Mashiach not only for the physical benefits, which will also come along, but they will come along consequent to Hashem purifying the spiritual state of man. No, because the only interference, what is problems physically, is because there's the interference comes from the spiritual realm and plane. When Hashem will clean that up, consequently everything will be good begashmis.
But it works the opposite way as well, right?
Why?
Well, because with Noach and the Dor Mabul, it talks about how they corrupted the animals also.
Okay.
So was that start off as a spiritual tumah, or that was people?
Well, there was so much tumah in the world,
but it was the opposite direction, right? Because the way you're describing Mashiach comes, it creates a spiritual awakening that rips away tumah from the spiritual realm, and then it manifests in physical.
Right.
But this was sort of the opposite.
Why
they were building the tower, and they were.
You're mixing with two stories. The tower was later. The tower was later after Noach, to the end of Noach. In the beginning, it says they were all corrupt. Even the corruption pervaded the world of animal as well.
Right.
So you're saying that, it was all came from man because man was so corrupt. There was so much tumah in the world. It was manifest by animal as well. That's why Hashem took them away.
Right.
But here we're dealing also with the physical state, not on how world. Okay, it's all connected. How world reacts to kedusha. How even the world of animal acts. Plant animal. It says Lashon Mashiach will come. It says even the daimon will tell the person walking, which means the inanimate, the sidewalk will tell the person, why aren't you speaking to Torah? But also you're dealing with the physical state of Am Yisrael as well. Why will there be so much riches and so much good and so much health and wealth and everything? It's because all problems ultimately are a consequence to the way things are spiritually. So when we see all these brachas, it's all because it's Recha Tumah Av Minaris. That's the real blessing. The Eibishter will take away, eradicate, clean up everything, clean up the whole system, drain the system. But what happens if a person was born before Mashiach's coming? Does he have to wait till this nevuah to come? Or he's stuck for good? For good, none of it could be this world. Who knows? Like maybe you can say that's the part of loss. When Hashem Rahman al-Salam is a retribution, it ultimately takes away any retribution takes away. It's like rubbing alcohol on a piece of glass. You get a glass, a kid gets glass in his foot. What hurts is not so he doesn't care about the glass so much. He cares about the rubbing alcohol. When the father takes him to the doctor to rub the alcohol, same thing. It's the Aveda is the problem, but any experience, negative experience, is ultimately cleaning the bed. But we're talking about somebody who we ask Hashem, we don't want any negative experience. But are we stuck with it? Are we stuck with the Shalosh Tzimtzum? So the Rebbe introduces something which is, again, this is a union in Teda, very important, again, related to the time which we're in now, which is the phenomenon of tshuva. Tshuva has the ability to do something magical, miraculous, that it could even uproot the Shalosh Tzimtzum, and not only uproot it, but make them gzachiyes, positive of it, which is yesterday's mistakes or yesterday's dainis, even things which I've done inadvertently become today's merits. That doesn't really make sense. So in other words, and that's why it's, again, all interconnected with all many other Maimarei Razal we find in the Gemara. That's very powerful. How could you say that?
Right.
This guy never sinned, and all of a sudden the Baal Tshuva stands higher, and it's a Gemara. Finished. That's where once there's a Gemara, we know everything from the Gemara.
Yeah.
How does this happen? What's behind this? It doesn't really make sense. What Alter Rebbe is telling us that in essence, that's why this is also why the Baal Tshuva stands higher than the Tzaddik, because the Tzaddik has no way of elevating the Shalosh Tzimtzum. Certainly not make it mitzvahs. It's a pure Avera, and the difference is if you're ahead of the game, In other words, if it's in front of you, dare we ever go ahead and say, well, the virtue of tshuva is so beautiful, why should I go do a mitzvah or stay away from the Aveda? I'll do the Aveda. Or like we said the other day, Sunday I'll be at Tzaddik, Monday I'll be at Rosh, I'll do Avedis, and Tuesday I'll have the virtue of tshuva, and Wednesday maybe I'll sin again, and then Thursday I'll do tshuva. Chas v'sholom. It says a preemptive plan, tshuva, is something terrible, even though eventually it says but it's a messy game. Yeah. It's something always in retrospect. What do I do now that I have Rahman al stumbled? I had the ability to come through and I stumble with an Aved, Rahman al. So the tzaddik cannot elevate the Shalosh Chesed Meis. Because when you're ahead of the game, you cannot say, well, I'm going to learn a piece of Gemara with that koyach of that non-kosher piece of meat. Impossible. There's no elevation. In other words, as an example,
what? Elevate the Shalosh Chesed.
He can.
Someone else, can't they?
For someone else?
Yeah, sure.
You're talking about someone who's a Rebbe or is a Nasi, that's another thing, it's a different subject. You're talking about regular tzaddik, someone does the right thing. He cannot go ahead and say, I have enormous strength, I serve the Eibishter so much, so not only I'm going to elevate the apple, I'm going to elevate the non-kosher piece of meat, I'm going to eat it and I'm going to have a good davening. No, it's going to bring you and your davening and you're learning everything down. So you can't do anything with it. The Baal Tshuva, when he does tshuva appropriately, he has the ability to elevate Shalosh Chesed Meis. Not only elevate, like we said, it becomes merits. It's something really magical what happens. It's something out of the ordinary. And that's why the Baal Tshuva is greater than the Tzaddik. So how does it work? So Alter Rebbe says like this. It doesn't mean a regular tshuva, because there has to be something which makes sense. We have to make sense of this Maimed Azal. The Baal Tshuva stands higher than the Tzaddik. It has to make sense that yesterday's advertent sins today becomes merits. It has to make sense in the human mind also, because it's not just like this is Torah. We have to try to make sense of Torah. Not we don't perform Torah in a way only when it makes sense to us. Let's not make a mistake. But once we find the Maimed Azal, we have to try to make the most sense of it. So Alter Rebbe says like this. Let's look at the life of the Baal Tshuva. The Baal Tshuva usually serves Hashem with much greater fervor and much greater intensity, like it says in the Zayir, Chele Yatir, with much greater intensity, much more than the tzaddik. And the the classic examples given. Who appreciates water? Not someone who's next to the tap of water constantly, someone who's in the desert. The desert, especially you're in the desert for a lengthy period of time. Your desire to water, there's no comparison to someone who's always next to the tap of water. Why so? The answer is because you're away from it. You have a drive to it which is unprecedented, or no comparison to some of those very things. So similarly, when the Baal Tshuva, as he sinned, he knows, he understands, he's cognizant of the fact that he knows where he fell. He fell into the most ugliest place in the world. Not only he fell. When you say he, means it's an neshama. He took the godly spark. And Alter Rebbe later says in the end of chapter 24. Chapter 24, because it's a godly spark, so ultimately taking God. The Rebbe says in Lashon, he takes the head of the king, you walk into the palace, grab the head of the king, and put it into Lashon of Alter Rebbe's tzayah, into defecation, if you will. That's what we're doing. And we think about it, it's not something of physical there. This is Shalosh Chesed Meis. We took our neshama and put in there. So that sensation which the Baal Tshuva experiences, and him noticing what he's done, hence he feels so distant, he feels as his whole being is in a state of desolation, and he's deserted from godliness, basically like the pasuk by David HaMelech, Eretz Tzia v'Oya B'li Mayim, Ein Mayim Ela Torah. So his drive and appreciation to Lukus is based on the Zayir, is so much more, has so much more might, and is so much more potent, and it's with so much more fervor, much more than the tzaddik that serves a Kodesh Baruch Hu on a constant place, basis. So the Rebbe makes a basic cheshbon over here, a calculation. It says, this person is serving God something in a very special and a very unique manner. What brought him to do that? It's the Aveiru who brought him to do that. Clear. Nothing else brought him to do that. Because if he would never go there, he would never appreciate a lukus. So again, remember, this is all, we have to be very careful. I mentioned also in the other class, because when we deal with it, we have to be extremely careful, because once we realize this virtue of tshuva, it sounds good. Let's plan this ahead of time, preemptively plan a state of. It's not going to work. First of all, if you preemptively sin for the sake of tshuva, you're probably not going to do tshuva also. It's a messy situation. It's always in hindsight, in retrospect. I sinned. Where am I going? that drive that the Baal Tshuva has is only because he sinned. So the Alter Rebbe says, if we see it's because he sinned, because he deserted himself, he went in a place which is deserted from Elokus. So the only reason why he has that drive is because of the Aveda. So the Aveda is right now which brought him to closer to the Eibush. That's why he's higher than the Tzaddik, and that's why in this again, when many Mefarshim deal with this problem, how can an Aveda become a Zachis? How can it become a merit? The answer is because Aveda brought this Yid to serve the Eibush in this very unique fashion. So that's why the Alter Rebbe makes it clear. That's why it's not a regular tshuva. Do we have this virtue of Zdeinis Laslam Kizachis? Someone's going to say, well, I sinned, I turned the page, I'm no more sinning, so I have many more mitzvahs because my Avedas became mitzvahs. It's not becoming mitzvahs so much. Because the whole part is it's a rational calculation, or it's a calculation based on rationale. It's because I serve the Eibishter with such fervor, I serve the Eibishter with such a chayz, with such vitality. What contributed to this Avedas Hashem chayz, such great chayz, is the Aveda. So therefore the Aveda becomes Zachis. But what if I just turn the page? I did a regular tshuva, hi, how are you? I did a regular tshuva. I turned the page. So nothing really changed within me. And as mentioned the other day, I'd been better off if I never did the Aveda, if I didn't do it in the first place. So what is it? So there's nothing you can say on that person. You can say on that person that he's. Just give me a second. You can't say on that person that it becomes zachiyos, it becomes merits. Because why should it become merits? There's nothing changed within his Avodas Hashem. Nothing changed with him. He's a regular, same person. As opposed to if he taka changes, and he becomes a different person. In other words, he does not a regular tshuva, but a unique type of tshuva that he feels. He really is not only cognizant about where he went. He feels strong. You have that. He's emotionally disturbed about it. We said the example. What is the worst when you go? Give a classic example. It's worth it repeated as it is. The parents take their child to an amusement park. He's all excited, and he sees every ride he wants. He can't make up his mind which ride he wants. He's in a good place, and he turns around and he sees not his father, not his mother. Devastated. Doesn't see anybody he knows. Obviously, at that point, he's not interested really in anything. Not the best rides which he was so excited about. He even couldn't skip a beat or catch his breath which one he's going to take first. That's all gone. He's just focused. He just wants to see his parents. And it goes through a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Every minute is like a month. And 15 minutes and starts crying, obviously, because he's realized he's alone. It's a state of loneliness. He's really not only cognizant about the fact that he doesn't see his parents. His whole emotional being is he's extremely emotional. His emotions were completely taken over by that notion that he's alone. And all of a sudden from far he sees his parents, his mother, his father. That drive he has to them, at that moment which he notices them, he never experiences them like that before. Never is never. When he's with them all the time, he never appreciates them so much. It's the excitement, and from then on, you could even say every time he's hugging his parents more often. It could be even 2 years later, consciously or subconsciously, or subconsciously, he has that appreciation to his father or mother. Is because those 15 minutes that he didn't see them, it was devastation. He felt all alone, and without. In a most desperate state he could have ever imagined. So it's not only for the moment that he appreciates seeing them, their whole being as parents to him becomes so much more precious throughout.
Right.
The same thing.
But if
the
parents deliberately left the kid, then obviously it would be very damaging to him.
Oh, we're not talking about...
Well, no, what I'm saying is, in the analogy, the person who does an Avera, right, in order to do Teshuvah afterwards, it doesn't have that effect.
Right. Correct. Because even according to Torah, it's not a simple coming back. Even according to Torah, the Eibishter doesn't appreciate it. Here, we're dealing with the Eibishter. The person stumbled, he sinned, and the Eibishter has his 2 hands stretched out to him, basically, and saying, you can do Teshuvah. So when the Baal Tshuva is understanding, he understands, he's clear in his mind about where he was, that state that it was devoid of Elokus. completely devoid of godliness. He brought himself to a state of shalosh kibsat completely impurity. And he's emotionally taken over by that whole notion of what he's done and where he placed himself. Himself as neshama, what he did to the Eibush himself. He took Reish Shel Melech, the head of the king. He brought him in the most filthiest place. Excuse me, to say it blatantly, this is what it is. So when he has that emotional experience and he's running back to Lukul's, his appreciation to Lukul's, that's where this Dainis Naslik Izach is. That is merit, that is Avedas which he done purposely are transformed to merits. And he stands higher than the tzaddik because he's serving the Eibush to B'chel with greater excitement. So we see over here that there's two types of tshuva. There's a tshuva, I turn the page. Did Hashem forgive me? Hashem says it clear, and this is what Hashem writes in the Torah. Hashem yislach leh, forgive you. Turn the page, I forgive you. Because that's the ikar of tshuva. Stop sinning. We mentioned also, there's, even today it's important to say because many people think a tshuva, how much I'm going to cry. Not always it works. Sometimes, you get emotional, you sin, you just sin the same thing 5 minutes later. Because the ikar of tshuva, Alter Rebbe brings it based on the psak din. Because Alter Rebbe was a paisik and legal Torah, and he says the psak din is stop sinning. Stop doing what you're not allowed to do and start doing what you have to do. In other words, you weren't careful. And if a person turns the page and he stops, according to Torah, Hashem yislach leh, Hashem is going to forgive him. But to say that because he just turned the page, he stands higher than the tzaddik? Absolutely not. What for? Why should we ever consider him higher than the tzaddik? So Alter Rebbe says, in order to have all those, what says in the Gemara, you're higher than the tzaddik, and to transform the Avedas to mitzvahs, these daines to zachis, to merits, you have to do that special tshuva. So we have two levels of tshuva over here. Here, the conclusion of this chapter, the Alter Rebbe introduces one of the famous Avedas, and he says it's a third level of tshuva. That's why I said introduction, because it's a third level of tshuva. It's a type of Aveda, which we'll learn about because this is part of Pedic Zayin. It's a type of Aveda which, in essence, it has this dichotomy to it. It's a worse Aveda than any other Aveda which is in the Torah. Because even in a sense, it's even worse than Bias Hasuris. And in other words, inappropriate relationships. But the Rebbe says he's the tumah which a person increases by this particular Aveda. Be ma'id, a very unusual lashon in Torah, shabiksav, and in any part when you say ma'id itself, like b'chol ma'idcha, it means a very profound and deep and like an extreme expression. When you have double ma'id, it's a double extreme. It's very, very rare you find ma'id. And here the Rebbe says negatively, that a person increases in impurity even more than other even inappropriate relationships. And when I say dichotomy, is because here you have a third level of tshuva that the Eibishter gave us a matana, which is called krishma shalamita. Saying krishma at night before the person goes to sleep. And when you say with a kavana, and Alter Rebbe adds lashon kavana tsuma, which is intense kavana, that rips away the tumah in this particular Aveda, that on the Aveda itself, in other words, you don't, from a certain perspective and point of view, you don't need that latter type of tshuva which we said before regarding the machalas asuris or bias asuris, in other words, inappropriate relationships or inappropriate food or any mitzvahs leisasa, which in order to have the highest level, in order to reach the darga of higher than the darga of higher than the tzaddik, bal tshuva higher than the tzaddik, or that the zdaina should become zachis, you need that unique type of a tshuva. In a sense, you don't need that exertion or that intense tshuva in order to get rid of the tumah which was created by this type of Aveda. And that's why I say the dichotomy. In one hand, it's a worse. You
do need tshuva. You need a special kind of kavana when you're saying
special kind of kavana by krishma. It's not necessarily, you could say, well, all tshuvas are ultimately connected. Or could you say that this tshuva, this repentance, is only, you must stop before that special tshuva? You don't must stop. You could also and also because of when we say dichotomy, because of the other side, that we know that you went into territory which is worse than machalis asuris and worse than prohibited food and prohibited relationships, you also brings about, you could definitely reach this unique tshuva which we mentioned before.
Was it higher?
Which is you could, if you think that you went to the lowest level, it's probably going to evoke with you something. You're going to feel more how you're not only in a desert, but you're behind the desert, or you're miles away from any place of habitant. or in this context, away from Elokus. So certainly could bring about, but here would bring about something deeper in your Avodas HaTshuva, which again is going to do something great for you. But here we're dealing based on erasing what I've done. Erasing what I've done, Alter Rebbe tells us there's a gift which is called Krishma Shalamita with Kavanat Tzuma. In other words, you don't need that unique tshuva. You could have it. The average person would have it, because Alter Rebbe says the flip side of this is that you went lower than Bias Asuris, right? Lower than inappropriate relationships. So it definitely can evoke, based on the previous understanding of the experience of the Baal Tshuva, it can evoke a deeper sense of tshuva within you. But we're dealing based on the letter of the law. And the letter of law meaning to say that in order to get rid of that intense tumah, Hashem gave us a present which is called Krishma Shalamita, the Kriya Shema which we say. It's not the Ma'ariv, it's when we say after Ma'ariv. And we say with Kavanat Tzuma. The Gemara says that whoever reads Krishma Al Mitasi, which means at his bed, meaning that it doesn't mean people lying. Someone says Krishma Shalamita, he's lying with his sitter up. No, it's not a way to read Krishma. Al Mitasi, which means associated to prior you're going to sleep. It says, the Gemara says it's like you're holding a sword of two-edged sword. In other words, it's sharp on both sides. And this sword kills the structure of Tumah, which was created via this sin. So it's really a gift, if you think. It's kind of a bonus that we have this Krishma that we say tshuva with a kavanat tzuma. So the first level of tshuva obviously is always needed, meaning to say it's not about your emotional experience, it's not about your Krishma Shalamita. You got to stop an Aveda. So this is the first thing regarding this Aveda as well. The Rebbe said tshuva nechaina. First of all, stop doing that. It's not I'm going to say I'm going to have this, I'm going to have a tshuva experience, but I'm not going to focus on Aveda. The first thing is, again, the psak din of any tshuva is, based the psak din about tshuva is that one has to stop doing the Aveda, stops doing the sin. Yet what about the problem and the what I caused, the consequence of the sin? That's the gift of Krishma Shalmita, which is not included in the two types of tshuva we spoke about before. Again, one was just turning the page, which Hashem says, I'll forgive you. But you don't have the virtue of the Baal Tshuva. Two is that virtuous type of tshuva, which is, again, makes the person to that Baal Tshuva, the quintessential Baal Tshuva, which the Gemara deals with. This is a third level of tshuva, which is focused on Krishma Shalamita, which takes away the problem. It doesn't mean to negate that quintessential level of tshuva, which we spoke about before, but focusing on this has a unique pattern or a unique remedy to this problem is Krishma Shalamita. That's, again, I will just say, that's after the first thing of the tshuva, stop doing the sin, any sin. It's very important to note. I say it a few times because, you say, I children, and they forget. It could easily be forgotten that it's a yisaid gomor, it's a halacha that a person cannot have any experience about tshuva if he didn't make a resolution that I'm going to really stop doing this aveda or that aveda, or the mitzvahs I was supposed to do I was indifferent to, I didn't do them. This is the first thing. I'm doing tshuva means say, Eibishter, I'm starting to do the mitzvahs which I was indifferent to, and I'm stopping to do the avedas which I wasn't supposed to. First thing. That's before you even go into any experience. And Hashem Yislach Le, Hashem will forgive you, because that's the basis of tshuva. You can't build a building without a base. It's going to fall apart, inevitably. Top of that, you want to have the virtue of the Baal Tshuva, then there is the tshuva we said before. Here, in order to correct the problem to be corrected is Krishna Shalomit. So let's read it inside. I hope we'll be able to finish the Perek over here. All right. Achachayis. Let's see. Do we have it? I don't know if you have the right page. It starts which means in however. And in English, however, you have the however.
No. Yeah. Sure.
However.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
He has it.
No.
He doesn't have
Here.
it.
No.
Here's another one.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
You do. Good. You have another one. It's okay. You don't have to send it
looks
back.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So, however. So we're dealing, however. If you're missing one over here. Okay. So he says, however, the chayis shebetiba seresh yotzim avatala, in other words, the energy which is in the emissions, which went in wasted emissions. Even though it also descended and was consumed in that shalosh klubas atmeis. Harizu Eilu Misham, it ascends from there, B'tshuva Nechayna, right? You see, you notice B'tshuva Nechayna is the appropriate tshuva. It doesn't say that special tshuva, we spoke about it before. What he does add is over here is the Kavana Tzuma B'Krishma Shalamita, with intense Kavana, intention. When he reads Krishma Shalamita. Kinedim Arizal, like the Arizal writes, that Kavana Tzuma of Krishma Shalamita takes away, elevates the energy which the person has brought into Shalosh, or created in association with Shalosh Klipsat Meis. And this is based on that Arizal, but Alter Rebbe goes on. Everything has to be based on Nigla the Torah, or Minum is B'Gemara. It's hinted in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Kol HaKeir Krishma Shalamita say, whoever reads Krishma Shalamita, he's holding a sword which is a two-edged sword, because this kills the gufis achitzainim, the bodies of impurity, shenasa levush, which became a garment, lechayis shebetipis, to the energy which is within these tipat. So unfortunately, there's bodies of impurity, which when we say nasim levushim, levushim means that they anchor it down. When you put something on the table, right, even a feather, it could start flying away. But you put something on top of it, it's there to stay. So these kufis achitzainim, they're holding down the energy which was created via this particular sin. And if they're holding it down, it's existent. It's existent, and it's connected to my neshama. My neshama is anchored and can't rip itself away from this impurity which was created. It's my neshama. It's the person who sins. That's his neshama, which is connected to that, enormous energy of impurity, because he was the one who sinned.
When it's not that the tipos themselves become impure.
Sure.
Well, the way you described it is that they're.
Yeah, but they create create also the gufis achitzainim. Okay. It's like somebody, for example, let's think about it, right? Let's say in an inappropriate relationship, physical inappropriate relationship. But chas v'shalom, a child is born. There's a lavush, there's a garment over here, which is the body of the person. It's holding down, it's anchoring in this physical world a state of impurity, because if the child was born in a non-legitimate relationship, which let's say Eshesish, according to it's a mamzer, right? It's anchoring it down, but forcefully, very heavily, that you can't even you're not allowed to. Someone's going to say, okay, we'll orchestrate some plan over here to get rid of this goof. So the neshama of this goof will go away. Chman. Someone kills this mamzer as an example. It's not even a question, but just let's say theoretically, he's chayv misa. There's a real problem over here because it's anchored in Olam Hazeh. But it's not only the body's anchored in Olam Hazeh, the whole energy of his neshama, of his whole makeup, what makes him function, everything, all that spiritual energy, spiritual and all the different levels, are also created via this inappropriate relationship. Right. The problem is that it has a body which is anchored, it's a physical body.
But is the mamzer himself or herself, is that person impure from the moment they're born? They're considered...
You know what? To a great extent, yeah. The fact that they can't marry a regular Jewish boy or girl.
They're neshama, though. Is there neshama?
There's something. I don't know. There has to be something.
Or is it because what it's saying here is the sword will cut away these external forces and will release the purity that has been.
But it doesn't say the purity. It's not the purity. It's what
have become garments for the vitality.
Right.
Of the,
yeah, but I'm asking you a question. That's what I'm asking. I'm giving this question. When someone, let's say, when a person's killed, let's say, Rahman al-Islam, not someone killed, that person kills, right? Because it has to be killed, then you have to go find the nefesh or the neshama and try to pull it out. It works hand in hand. Once the person's killed, the neshama is going to the neshama. The good part of the neshama goes to heaven, which is again the chelik el-kamimal in a regular person, and the nefesh which made the person function, it just disappears because there's no functioning body, so it goes wherever it came from. It does, I don't know where it goes, or it doesn't go anywhere. It just leaves. Now, you don't have to do something special to get it out, because once it's killed, it's killed. Similarly over here, why is that? Because it goes together. That's why I'm just giving this example, because it goes together. Because what the person did over here is, not only he created the body, he created the whole energy. The problem is that he created an energy, and this energy he needs to elevate it. So on its own, you can't elevate it because Shalosh Kibbutz Meis. You can't. You cannot elevate Shalosh Kibbutz. If I take a bite into something which is not kosher, and I'm going to say a good bracha, I'm trying to elevate it, it cannot be elevated. It's stuck in Shalosh Kibbutz. Here also, it's also stuck in. What is what is it stuck in Shalosh Kibbutz? But in other words, there's a part of Shalosh Kibbutz which is not only created by the action, but it's anchoring it down to stay permanent. When I kill the gufis, it's automatically the chayis is going to go away. So it's not the chayis is pure. The chayis is part of the impurity. But I cannot do anything with it, or I can't go elevate it, means elevate my neshama, or elevate any energy which was placed in these gufis, because till I do tshuva, just like when it comes to an appropriate food, it ultimately elevates, and it could even elevate the food also. But again, retroactively, it could elevate the food. So similarly, I could elevate my neshama and anything which was harmed by this particular aveda. What is anchoring it? It's the chayis itself, but additional, it's the guf, it's the body of those chitzainim, meaning, say, negative, evil forces, which are holding it. So when a person says krishma mitasi, he kills those evil forces. That's not talking about physical death. Obviously, we're talking about the enormous energy which exists in saying krishma shalamita, kills those forces, and then va'elachayis mehem kedulechain, so it can ascend. Vilachain. Do we have the next one? V'lachein? You have it? And it goes, therefore, yeah? You got it? He says, for that reason, and what's the v'lachein? For this reason, let's say what the reason is that it's a unique tshuva. It has a kind of separate chapter, which is not common. It doesn't have any commonality with any other Aveda. It says that's the only reason why it's the sole reason why the sin is not mentioned in the Torah, in the package, and there's many few parshas would deal strictly with inappropriate relationships, which pretty much this should fit in. Why isn't it there? Even though it's a classic, it's a Veda, it's terrible Veda, but just because it has nothing, it has no commonality with any other Veda. In the type of tumah that it causes, but mainly the type of tshuva which exists precisely regarding this Aveda, which does not exist with any Aveda. In other words, someone does Aveda, they eat something non-kosher, certainly Krishma Shalamit is a time of retrospection, a time of reflection, and that's a time when a person realizes where he is holy and he makes a time of resolution. But the reading of the Krishma itself, it does not uproot or doesn't correct the problem of eating something non-kosher. Not at all. Again, as much as it's a time of reflection and retrospection, saying the Krishma itself is not what's going to elevate or correct the problem of eating something which is not kosher. This is an Aveda. The reading Krishma itself is the knife, is the sword, which eradicates any of these impure forces. So the tshuva is unique to this Aveda, and it's the only reason, it's the only reason because of the tshuva, that's why it's not mentioned. Because if you think about the Aveda itself, it's even more severe. And the sin is incredibly greater. You're dealing with the quantity or quality of impurity. Quantity of impurity, which it produces and increases b'ma'id. Again, naturally, this is said negatively, but it's by this wasteful emission. This is very powerful, more than inappropriate relationships. Now, there's a simple pirush which one could say. No one will go into it, but just to say that when one learns it, he's right away going to think, well, that's the reason. Why is it more? Because the inappropriate relationship, the person needs another person to consent. And here, not. Very briefly, right? So that's why maybe that's what I was saying. So there could be more impurity. Instead of saying he's independent. In other words, in practically speaking, one would say that Dr. Rebbe isn't really meaning that why is there qualitatively and quantitatively more impurity? Because it's independent of another person. So because it's independent, so the person, therefore, there is a possibility there's more quantitative impurity.
I don't think that logic doesn't make sense to me. Because there's two people doing an Avera when there's two people involved. So there's
correct.
double
Yes,
the amount.
100%. Yes. Two people doing an Aveda. But let's say, right? But ultimately you need the other person. With in inappropriate relationship, you always need the other person.
Yeah.
In this Aveda, just because what the Aveda consists of, it's not dependent on another person. So therefore, let's say break it down. Like I said, I don't want to get too technical, and just as a break it down, a person who has plans an Aveda with someone inappropriate, right? In an inappropriate relationship, you need the consent of another person. So the person would sin. Let's say you could sin once in a month. Let's say twice a month, because he's dependent on the other person consents. In this case, it's not dependent on the person consents. So therefore, Rahman al-Itzlan, the person sin more frequent with this particular Aveda. Right?
It's easier to do.
It's in other words not dependent. It's just a person's decision. So therefore, one would say, but that's why there's more quantity of tumah. But if you look in the simple meaning, the Alter Rebbe does not allude to that.
No.
The Alter Rebbe said that from the Lashon Alter Rebbe means, let's say Rahman al-Itzlan, that once a person does a Veda, and again Rahman al-Itzlan, no one should be. We're talking about the way it is in Torah over here. Theoretically, when someone would have an inappropriate relationship and someone would do this Aveda once, this Aveda increases a much lower level of impurity than even that once inappropriate relationship. That's the simple meaning of the Alter Rebbe over here. So this is again to clarify. So it's Yisrael Rebbeis Asuris. So why is it not mentioned in Titus? The answer is, again, just because that unique tshuva which the Eibishter gives us is bonus, it's enormous bonus. It's like kind of, if you think about it, if you want to classify this Aveda, it's the worst Aveda. If you say it's worse than Machal Tzores and Bias Asuris, which are the classic Avedas and Avedas Chamuris, and you say this is worse, you could say this is the worst Aveda. So that's why the Krishma Shalamita is so special over here, because it's a real true bonus. And that's what he says. It should be as a suris meisid kecha v'chayis b'klibetz meya b'yeser achein yechol haus mishom achayis b'tshuva ela im kinyas tshuva mi'ava rabba kol kach. In other words, by bias asuris, you need a greater tshuva. The tumah is less, but you need a greater tshuva in order to yank out that chayis. Remember, we said if we just stop what you're doing, it's good. Hashem will forgive you, but you're not yanking out the chayis of Shalosh Gadmei. You're not elevating the Shalosh Gadmei so that you don't have this dainis naslik izach. You don't have the advertent Vedas transformed into merits because you didn't yank it out of Shalosh Gadmei. So you need the unique tshuva. You need that unique tshuva mi'ava rabba, from great intense love. Kol kachash dainis naslik izach. Then you suck out, you yank out from the energy from the lowest level of impurity, which again the Shalosh Gadmei is to the extent that the advertent Avedas become merits. As opposed to this Aveda, you don't need that very unique tshuva to elevate the energy which was caused through this Aveda. You could just say Krishma day in, every night, with appropriate kavanah. That takes away the energy from the Shalosh Gadmei. And because of that bonus, like I say, I don't have any other word to use, bonus. You tell the person is told that it's the greatest Aveda, but the Kavanah Atzuma, you don't need that unique tshuva we said before, regular about, or in other words, classic Avedas. The fact that night after night you could say Krishma with a Kavanah Atzuma, and with that you're accomplishing what the Baal Tshuva needed, a regular classic Aveda, which is written in the Torah, that tshuva me'ava rabba with the great intense love. What other word could we use? It's a bonus Hashem gave us called Krishma Shalamita. Based on this above mention, Rebbe concludes this chapter where it really becomes problematic, something we alluded to just before. That now we have the whole picture kind of pretty clear. We'll understand what the Razal tell us, our sages tell us, of blessed memory. What is a sin that a person cannot correct? Not through regular tshuva, not through tshuva me'ava rabba, and not through Krishma Shalamita as well. What is it? So Shabbat, someone had an inappropriate relationship. V'hoilid mamzer, and he missed that one? Here. V'hoilid mamzer, and he gave birth to mamzer, literally mamzer means the bastard, right? Sha'oz gam im yasa tshuva g'dela kol kach, even though he's going to do this great tshuva again, he alluded to it before this part, which is again the tshuva mi'ava rabba. You cannot ascend He yanked the chayis out of Shalshul. This Shalshul means to kedusha, to holiness. You cannot ascend this chayis, elevate this chayis rather, because at that point it already came down to this physical world. Then he slapsha beguf basar v'dam, invested in the body of a human being, which is flesh and blood. So he's here to stay, as long as Hashem decides to keep him in this world. And that becomes very problematic to the extent that's what Ezamu v'Shalei Chaliskin, Chas v'Chalila, and this person, even according to Torah, his blood is not cheaper than anybody else's. Meaning to say, no, you cannot do something when someone is, let's say, devastated. He brought in a sham and a guf. He wanted to do it. What's the natural thing he would want to do? He'd want to get rid of this person. Chas v'Chalila. It becomes a classic din of Ritzicha, which means murdering another yid, and there's the capital punishment, like the biggest tzaddik in the world, and that's why it's so disturbing, or that's why this is the reason for this classification. Just want to conclude over here with a little story. It's a lengthy story. I'm just going to say the points of it. There was a story in time, I don't know if the Baal Shem Tov, the Talmidei of Baal Shem Tov, I'm not sure, that there was a story like this, that a person went really far, extremely far, and he, don't worry, you can have it, or I'll collect it. I'll collect all the papers. He was in a state in which he left his family, and he went from Dechi al Dechi, Arveir Gerer Saveir, not even understanding a person Rahman al-Islam could go down. He doesn't realize where he even began. He lost his path in Rahman al-Islam. He married another woman he wasn't allowed to, and he had children and so on. And then he became really, really ill. And ill because he realized what he's done. In other words, in the context of tshuva, he was beside himself that he could not go further. He could not proceed, and then even as a Baal Tshuva, he could not proceed because he was so devastated. Anyway, like I say, it's a long story with many details. But what happened was, which is something unusual, that God listened to his prayers, and that child, which was born, fell ill and eventually passed away. Again, orchestrated by God himself, by no one else. No one did anything, but he was so beside himself. They went on a boat, or not ill, I think it was a boat. It was like a whole story which God really listened to this individual's prayer, but it's so not the norm, because you're not dealing with tshuva me'ava rabba. Tshuva me'ava rabba, the Alter Rebbe says clearly that even the person does tshuva with his great intense love, it's still not correcting this problem. This was a type of tshuva which was beyond, and it justifies ultimately that the Eibishter's interest in the tshuva of the yid is really without any borders. That even something which Torah says clearly, and according to all the rules, even the greatest level of tshuva, mi'ava rabba, with intense and fervorous love, cannot solve the problem. And the yid, because of that essential connection the yid has with the Eibishter loves the yid unconditionally. That even he went so far, and Torah itself says in that particular story, like I said, no one could ever take it and say, well, okay, for obvious reasons also, because when a person just wants to compare those stories, not necessarily he's going to have that experience. He's just going to, but the story itself is a kind of a model which tells us how deeply the Eibishter is connected, or the Yid's Neshama is so connected with the Eibishter. It's a chelik l'kami mal, which is really what we learned in Chumash today. It's a pardon of God. And the person demonstrated authentic tsar, such authentic pain. And he was so beside himself that he couldn't live. His life was in danger. He was just the way the story went. They tried to revive him, telling him that because it was a rumor that his kids they didn't make it, so the people didn't understand why he was becoming sick. Like I said, I'm just giving you some some pieces of the story. It's a long story, but so they told him that, don't worry, they're doing good. And as they told him they were doing good, he went in another fainting spell because they weren't getting it. They tried to comfort him on something which, on the contrary, and to the extent he was so beside himself, he literally fainted whenever they told him, till there was someone who came and understood what was really going on in this person's experience. Never cared. There was this expression of tshuva. He whispered into his ear what really happened. That's when he became better. Which again, like I say, it's not important the details of the story, but this is a model which shows that even something which Torah says that la yuchaliskin, but because the yid's, the etzem, the neshama of the yid is more deeper, rooted in the Eibishter himself, more than Torah. Like the Eibishter, like it says in Tanat Ve'Eliyahu, when Hashem says in the Torah, Tzavas b'nei Yisrael, so who comes first, Torah or the yid? if the Torah is telling command to the Yid, means say the Yid is really there before. So that's what it says in Torah Nevelio Rabbah, that there's two who were created prior to the creation of the world, the Torah and the Yid. Who was created even before the two, which is obviously right, the Torah and the Yid. So which one was created before? So the Torah Nevelio Rabbah says that because the whole Torah is in a way that Eibush is telling Moshe Rabbeinu Tzav, command the Jew. If Torah is before the Jew, what do you mean command the Jew? Is that right? The Jews is anchored in HaKadosh Baruch Hu more than the Torah. Torah brings it to light. That's why the Jew has to follow the Torah, not to say, well, I'm higher than you. No. Because if you don't follow Torah, that whole notion of your connection to Eibush really stays in the dark. Torah is till Torah it brings that notion itself. But essentially, the Yid is connected to Torah, even to the Eibush, even more than the Torah in a sense. So therefore, even something the Torah itself says, that you cannot correct it. But because the Yid, that story again, that was a model which showed that the Yid is even deeper connected to the Eibishter, and therefore, when the Yid demonstrated such pain, literally pain, that he wasn't interested, he could not go on and live. Every time he heard something, he literally fell back into this fainting state. He could not go on. Hashem saw the pain of the Yid, that he orchestrated something that doesn't even exist, is not even rooted in Torah. Again, like I said, there's many details of the story, but it's a model, it's an icon which says how much the Eibishter favors the Tshuva of the Yid, which is again very appropriate for tonight. It's interesting that we just stopped over here, that this is a time in Kippur is really the time which is an opportunity like no other time. It's Hashem says, I love you so much, I can't stand the fact that you should have a blemish. I can't stand that there should be there'd be a blemish, or your neshama should be tainted, which again ultimately brings a non-smoothness, let's say, if you will, in the relationship with Hashem. And Hashem says, I love you, and I want to have this overt relationship with you. I don't want anything to stand in the way. And the only thing which stands in the way between Hashem and the Yid is sin. So Hashem is so disappointed from it, or he wants so much, he loves the Yid so much, he says, fast. I'm taking this day and I'm gonna work it out that you'll do that fasting, you'll daven in shul. I'm gonna lifnei Hashem titaru. Interesting, see lifnei Hashem, to the most deepest part of Hashem, even higher than Shem Hashem, like the Anochi. I'm gonna within Anochi Meichav Sha'echa. I'm going to personally wipe away your sins, and which is again ultimately an expression of love. Hashem says, I want to have a clear, smooth relationship with you. I don't want any interference. That's the present of Yom Kippur, which we're coming into, like this is, and it's in so many levels from this ending over here, especially that story which we mentioned. It's a famous story which shows that there's no boundaries to the Hashem's interest in a smooth relationship with the Yid, and that's the beauty of Yom Kippur. So we utilize it, and they should help. We should Hashem lifnei Hashem titaru. Should be clean. We should have an open. Manifest relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu spiritually, and again, like we said, we started the class, everything the physically is always consequent to the spiritual. So if we'll have an open relationship, we'll be pure. Hashem will definitely give us a good year, which can manifest in everything which life consists, physical life consists, good health, healthy children, abundance of wealth and abundance of health and long life and all the good things, because it's a new year, a new opening, a new open energy flowing back and forth between the Yid and Hashem, and collectively all of Am Yisrael, which is really the Gula, the redemption through Rechatum Avim Minoritz. It's all there. So have a good night.